Hey, good day, everybody. Folks will be moving into the webinar here from like the waiting area in Zoom, but my name is Ben Gabriel. This is our Tech Talk in August. That's a hot August day right now. UltraTax and ProConnect, the two income tax programs. That's what we're talking about, and that's what we're comparing here. So, Amy is going to do the lion's share of the presenting here. So, Amy, how's everything going with you?
It's going great. Happy to be here. Happy to talk through both UltraTax and ProConnect. I was going to make you represent ProConnect, Ben, but then I thought that would not be a very nice thing to do. So I'll take one for the team.
I know you're going to do a great job of representing both programs, sort of both sides of the equation. So that's what we'll do, everybody, for the next 1 hour. Amy, I get the easy jobs. Session's good for an hour of CP, everybody. So I know almost everybody or everybody knows that. Please answer 3 out of the 4 polling questions, if not 4 out of the 4 polling questions, please. I'm going to go ahead and put a copy of, first of all, a link to our resource on UltraTax versus ProConnect. It's like a little bit of foreshadowing for this recorded webinar here. So that should actually be a link to right inside the resource library in our platform, where we'll put a recording of this video a little bit later on. So that is in there. And then I'm also dropping a PDF of the slide presentation as well. You can pull that down. It's the exact same thing that's inside of that resource link that I just shared. The PDF that you'll find, whether through the chat in the Zoom or in the resource library in the platform, is exactly the same right now. We might add a tweak or two to the PDF a little bit later, but 99% of that is exactly what we'll talk about here. Amy may have added a bullet here or there. So handout is in the chat panel. Um, please answer the polls. You can use the Q&A to ask questions. You can also use the chat. And then like we always do, when you close out of the webinar, there'll be a survey. And it looks like Marcus hopped on, so Marcus will be in the background, probably helping out with questions and keeping an eye on things. So I think we're ready to go. Let's keep going, Amy. Let's go another slide here. Here's our learning objective, and hopefully this one will be quite apparent to everybody, but our objective today is to identify similarities, key similarities and differences between UltraTax CS, Thomson Reuters program, and Intuit ProConnect, one of Intuit's tax preparation programs. So that's our learning objective. Agenda, we'll talk about the products. Amy's got a great comparison chart side by side that we'll look at in a second. And if you've pulled that PDF down already, you'll know what she's talking about if you've gotten that far into the presentation. Talk about some likes and dislikes with each program. Do some slides. We elected to stay inside of the PowerPoint just to kind of keep the focus, but we've got some really good screenshots from different systems here to kind of walk through that business return workflow. We'll talk about cost. And then we'll end the session with what I just call, or Amy, what we've called some decision points. You know, if you were to be thinking about switching tax systems, right, which that's a big decision, that's a little bit of an understatement there. What are some of the things you might be thinking about, back and forth between the two systems? So, Amy, is that a pretty good synopsis on the agenda?
Yeah, that's perfect. We'll hit all those points. And then as Ben said, if you have questions, comments, feel free, use the chat or the Q&A panel. We'll keep an eye on both of them. So,
Perfect.
all right. I think you got our first poll, Ben.
Yeah, we're getting right after it here. So like I said, I do get the hard questions here. So let's start with this one. What tax software do you use? And I've listed, gosh, 8 or 9 different systems. So which tax software do you use? I'll give everybody 30 seconds or so, give or take. And we still have a few folks entering the webinar here, but what tax software do you use? And it looks like right now, everybody in the room is answering with one option. We are 100, almost, well, everyone that's voted anyway. So 5 more seconds. I'll leave that first poll up, everybody. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and close the first poll. There will be three more polls. I'm just like double check. Amy, do you see the results?
I see the results. Yes,
Mm,
it is
okay.
overwhelming. Everybody's using ProConnect. Okay, they can do it. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait.
UltraTax.
All right.
Everyone's using UltraTax. I see it.
All right.
Perfect.
Everyone's using UltraTax. Okay, so that's poll number one, everybody. We'll have three more polls. Okay, Amy, back over to you.
Okay, so that was the assumption going through and creating the information that is in this slide deck and in this presentation today, is that the majority of us are using UltraTax. So some things I'm going to tell you what you already know, but then just trying to how do these compare? Because we all are very familiar with UltraTax. So initially though, let's just go, okay, a little bit of history here. With UltraTax, Creative Solutions, back in the day, some of you might remember it, the original developer of UltraTax. It was founded in 1979 by Larry Beach. And then Thomson Reuters purchased Creative Solutions in 1997. And so Thomson also owns two other tax solutions. They've acquired tax solutions over the years, just like Intuit acquires solutions. So currently, Thomson owns Go System Tax, which is a solution that a lot of larger firms utilize. And then OneSource is the corporate tax program. So those are the two tax programs that Thomson owns. Revenue from Thomson's tax and accounting segment in 2024, it was listed as 366 million. Now, when you download these slides, links to this information is available there. If you want to go out and look at it yourself, by all means, since it's public information, you can easily pull that. And then Intuit ProConnect, if we compare on the other side, so Intuit Tax Online launched back in 2015. It went through a rename in 2016. And then again, Intuit has acquired a number of different companies throughout the years, but the current tax solutions that they own that we care about, because there may be some in other countries that they own. I didn't go down that rabbit hole. Um, are TurboTax, which we know, and then Pro Series and Lacert. So TurboTax, right? End user and customers using that. Pro Series, there is a professional version, and then Lacert would be your higher end tax package that would be very comparable to UltraTax. And some of you know that. Some of you have moved to UltraTax from Lacert. None of you here have moved from UltraTax to Lacert. You've moved from Lacert to UltraTax, but not the opposite way because you're currently on UltraTax. And then revenue specifically from the ProConnect line. So the way that Intuit breaks it out is they actually do break out revenue from Pro Series and Lacert, and they track that separately. And then they have the ProConnect, excuse me if I said it differently, segment. And so in 2024, that was 147 million. Now that is lumped in with their service. So that would also be like what's coming from e-signatures and anything that's an add-on to ProConnect. So just a little bit of insight between the two companies. You know, UltraTax is a very successful product for Thomson Reuters over on the Thomson side. So okay, that's a little bit of our history lesson. I'm going to take us right into poll 2 because this helps just kind of set the stage on where we're at, Ben, based on the question you're going to ask here.
Yeah, so poll number two, where is your tax software hosted? And I did put hosted in like quotes or whatever, but just because I didn't know if we'd have any ProConnect folks in here with browser-based stuff and things like that, or wherever people may be. So, when you're launching your tax software, when you're accessing your tax software, where's it coming from? Is it coming from your on-premise server that may be in your building, in your office, wherever that is? Is it being launched from the same vendor responsible for the tax software? So in this room, with a lot of people using UltraTax, you may be in Thomson's virtual office environment that they have. Certainly, do you have a third-party IT provider, that's a broad area there? or tax software browser based. So, and then I have some somewhere else's and I don't know. So I'll leave, it looks like almost everybody's voted here. So I'll just leave things up for 5 more seconds. People are voting pretty fast. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead. Oh, everybody's voted. So I'm gonna end the poll. And here's the results here. So Amy, looks like on-premise server and third-party IT provider, both tied in this room, and then same vendor responsible for tax software, and then tax software's browser based. We did have a few folks join us since poll number one here, or at least a couple folks, I think. So
Mhm.
mostly on-premise or IT provider with same vendor responsible for tax software. Could very well be TR, and then a few folks with browser based. So
Perfect.
yeah, okay. All right. Back to you, Amy. That was poll number two. We'll do two more, everybody.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, if this is hard to see, my apologies. Um, Zoom in on that screen, put your glasses on. But I wanted to kind of lay out some of the areas that we would think about when we want to compare two tax solutions if we are looking to migrate, right? And so the very first one listed is just what's the platform type and how do you deploy it? So, UltraTax is desktop based. Thomson is working to start to migrate it to the cloud, but it is a desktop based solution that either needs to be installed locally on the server that you have in the closet, or it is hosted either by Thomson or by a third party provider so that you can access it from anywhere, right? That is your UltraTax option. ProConnect on the other side is actually cloud based. CCH Access isn't really in our comparison here, but just to bring it up, CCH Access is cloud-based in brackets in that there is a thin client that still gets installed on all machines that are going to access it. So ProConnect is true cloud-based. There's no installation required. You're literally launching a browser tab, authenticating yourself in, right? Still authentication rules apply, but you don't need to install anything. So when you're looking at two different softwares, like, okay, what type of installation are we looking for a software? And then next up would be what's it best for? Which type of firm is the solution best for? And so for UltraTax, you see mid to large size or mid-size to large firms, high volume preparers. So there's a high volume number of tax returns that are going through and or complex returns, a level of complexity to them. UltraTax would make sense. It's if you were to rate the top three software providers from a complexity standpoint in handling them, it would be, well, in our world, it would be CCH, UltraTax, and Lacert. If you're talking to a sales rep, it would be GoSystem because it's super expensive to use, and that would be for larger firms. But UltraTax is really good for complexity. ProConnect is good for small to mid-sized firms that have a high volume of QBO clients because of its direct integration with QBOA. So that would make sense, right? And that's a consideration. If you think about where is your client information coming from? If you have a lot of QBD clients and not a lot of QBO clients, ProConnect isn't really going to be as ideal. If we get into pricing model, UltraTax has an annual license. Many of us on the line right now that are using UltraTax, very familiar with that. You can pay per returns that you wouldn't buy an unlimited license for because your volume of returns that falls into that entity or that state just isn't high enough to warrant paying for an annual license for that particular product. ProConnect is all pay per return. And we'll look at pricing towards the end of our time together. Today, I have shots of the pricing, or if you're looking through the slide deck already, it's in there. So we'll talk through that and what that looks like. Then we would get into, okay, so where does it live? How are we going to install this? Does it make sense for our firm? We obviously will do more digging and does it make sense for our firm? What's pricing going to look like? And then does it support forms that we need to file? And so they both support similar forms, just ProConnect is missing your 706s and your 5500s. So if you do a lot of those, ProConnect's not going to make sense for your firm. Complexity I already hit on. I just have it spelled out as a separate item there. UltraTax can handle consolidated entities, your combined reporting. ProConnect, meh, it can't. It probably could with some workarounds, right? But it's going to be more work than it's worth. And then what you would end up doing is you would end up having two tax softwares, one for your easier clients and one for your more complicated clients, which now you have two tax software programs. If we're in an effort right now to try to consolidate the number of apps that we use internally inside of our firms, then if we handle complexity or complex returns, moving to a system that doesn't handle complexity doesn't really make sense. QuickBooks integration. UltraTax does not have direct QuickBooks integration, hence the reason for no there. Can you make it happen with workarounds or other tools? Yes, you can. So currently inside of DBA, we utilize Tally4. Tally4 allows us to import information directly from QBO to make our tax code groupings, map our tax lines, and then to export that to be able to import it into UltraTax. So QuickBooks integration from a direct standpoint, UltraTax would be a no. Workarounds would be a yes. ProConnect has a direct import from QBOA. Okay, so if it is a QBO client in your QBOA account, you can directly integrate it into ProConnect. If it is a QuickBooks desktop client, you cannot directly import it into ProConnect. So you would still have to do the same workarounds that you would do with UltraTax if you are talking about QuickBooks desktop. So important thing to know, right? If you're half and half right now, half of your clients are on QuickBooks desktop, half are on QBO, then you're going to continue to do the same workaround that you do for those QBD clients that you are currently doing in UltraTax, if you're on UltraTax. Then we would move to, okay, what kind of client portals, what's our e-signature options, right? Like we know how we deliver returns now, we might be using additional tools. UltraTax doesn't have anything built in per se. You have export, excuse me. It doesn't have anything built in for client portal or e-signatures, but it has additional tools that you could add on. So you see them listed there. Net client is Thompson's portal solution that is still around. I say that slowly because it's still around, and I think it was 2001 is when net client portals came out then.
Sounds about right. Yeah, it's definitely been out for a while.
It's like 24 years. It's crazy. And then OnVO Client Portals is also a Thomson tool that you would license separately, right? That would allow you to deliver returns. And then you have your add-on for signature options that you could do through UltraTax, which is an additional fee. ProConnect, similar in that there is a separate thing, but Intuit Link is included. So Intuit Link, if any of you have used Pro Series or Lacert in the past, you may be familiar with that, right? That's Intuit's secure portal solution for clients. That's included with ProConnect. You would just have additional fees for signatures. So getting 8879 signed, ProConnect actually uses DocuSign that you can purchase right through ProConnect and send right through ProConnect. So that's a little bit of like, okay, how would we get this information to clients? Then from a document management standpoint, what is available to us? So right now with UltraTax, if you didn't buy anything extra, right? Like many of you are on OnVO for documents, right? And that's where you're using your document management because you were on File Cabinet, which was a separate application under Thomson. If you weren't on anything separate, UltraTax does have a file drawer, which is built in and it's very basic. You know, you can store your tax returns there. It's essentially a pared down version of File Cabinet is what file drawer was. And I don't remember how many years ago that became available. But ProConnect has something very similar. They have a very basic documents area. You can create your own folders. You could store your work papers there. So I think it's a little bit more flexibility than File Drawer, in that File Drawer was just static documents that you could save there. And if clients uploaded things to portals, they would show there. Um, ProConnect does something similar, except you can organize your documents. You can add your own documents to it. You can decide if it's client facing or internal. But still, I would consider it a basic document management solution. Multi-user access. Can you have multiple people in it, and can you decide permissions on who has access to what and what can they view? That is a yes for both of them. Both of them, you can control that, which is super important, right? As we're hiring people, maybe we have seasonal people working, maybe we don't want to give full access to be able to let everybody e-file tax returns or accidentally send them, right? So there's options that are available there. Then this is a big one that I actually had Molly, one of our controllers, do some testing in ProConnect, because I wanted her to take some of her more complex returns and just mess around with it and see, like, hey, what do you think about this? And one of the things that she thought was cool, she came back with, was the ability to open multiple clients at a time. She can do that in ProConnect Tax. She can't do that in UltraTax. So if she's working on one of her pass-through entities, and then she's also working on the individual, we all know, for those of us using UltraTax, that we have to jump in and out of those clients, right? I mean, we can have them easily available up in the top right corner to click and jump between them. But in ProConnect, you can duplicate your tab, just like you could in QBO. And then you can be in multiple clients at a time. So you could be back and forth, on your multiple monitors and looking through information. So that one is pretty cool. Diagnostic and error checking, it exists in both. They both have capabilities. They both link you to what they're talking about. So those are there. They're also segregated, similar to what you would expect, like what's informational, what's critical, what was the word you saw? Fatal. ProConnect
Fatal.
has fatal diagnostics, which just means you're not filing that return until you clear them. But custom reporting, UltraTax is data mining. The robustness of data mining is great, except it's also hard to use. So while a ton of options exist for what you can do from a reporting standpoint in UltraTax, if you don't get in there, mess around with it, or you don't have time to, it's just, there's a lot that you can do. So sometimes that's limiting. But ProConnect is very limited. You have some flexibility, but not much. You can create your own statuses that you want to track, and you can decide how you want to report on those. And they have some reporting for you, but not as robust as UltraTax. And then support is similar, except ProConnect has chat. UltraTax has chat for customer service, not necessarily for support. Maybe that's changed. So it's a little bit of a breakdown between the two. Just some things that, like, hey, if we're really thinking about this, what would we be considering, with probably the top ones: platform type, best for pricing model. Those are very important, right? Are we spending more money? Are we spending less money? How are we installing this? Is it solving any needs that we have? So, all right, I'm going to jump in. I don't think any questions, right, Ben? Do you see any questions out there?
I didn't see any question. I don't see any question. Marcus sent just a chat to us, and you mentioned Tally4, but DBA currently uses the Tally4. That's TALLYFOR. Everybody to go between QuickBooks and UltraTax. But Marcus mentioned that the firm has used Onvio work papers in the past, so he
Yeah.
mentioned that. So yeah, Amy, that's all we have for now. So proceed when you're ready, please.
All right, so let's jump into just likes and dislikes. I'm going to start with UltraTax, and you could maybe add to this list. What do you like and what do you dislike about it? For those of you that are using UltraTax, I'd love to hear feedback from you. Likes for also the ability to handle complex returns. I don't know that we have a lot of consolidated. We do, with acquisition that we did in January, we do have some heavy multi-state returns. And so UltraTax ability to calculate multi-state returns, sometimes it's a little slow, right? But the ability for it to be able to do it and to alert us to what we need to be paying attention to in some of those states is very important. The diagnostics are helpful in UltraTax. It does do a good job of that. Form and input linking, the ability to bring on a new team member that maybe isn't as familiar with UltraTax, but they know where something needs to go on a form, and the ability to jump right back into typically the appropriate input screen. I say it like that because it just doesn't work when you really need it to. That is nice. And then alike for us from a DBA standpoint, as we're analyzing like, okay, what makes more sense for DBA? Is it UltraTax? Is it ProConnect? Currently, our like is our team's knowledge of using UltraTax, right? The team is comfortable with UltraTax. We have been using it for a lot of years now. I think I'm trying to do math in my head right now. It's got to be at least like 9 to 10 years that we've been on UltraTax, right? So a lot of familiarity with the team. It would be new team members coming in that maybe weren't using UltraTax at the previous place that they were at. But dislikes, and the reason why we really started to explore ProConnect was that UltraTax is server based. And so if the only thing on our server is UltraTax and fixed assets and QuickBooks Desktop, couple of clients, then how do we solve so that we can get rid of the server? And so ProConnect would be a reason why we were exploring that. So that's a dislike of UltraTax. It's server based. We have to have a server. We either have to have a provider hosting a server for us. We need to have our own server in the closet. We need to hire a director of technology to house our own server, which is what we did inside of DBA, right? We hired Angel. He's our director of technology, and he has migrated our server to Azure. And so we are hosted via Azure, but it is all internally managed. That would be a dislike there. The ability to open one client at a time is a dislike. We can't jump into a past year and look at a past year, right? We're limited there. It's read only. And then integration with other tools. There are options, but they are workarounds, which a workaround isn't necessarily a bad thing, but if we're trying to reduce the number of tools that we're using, then we just need to be very mindful of that. So that's likes and dislikes for UltraTax. Let's go into likes and dislikes for ProConnect. So like on a ProConnect side, okay, opposite of that server-based is browser-based. This is browser-based. It is directly integrated with QBOA, makes it very easy to drop a client over from QBOA into ProConnect. We can have multiple clients open at the same time. We already talked about it. We can go, these are the screenshots Ben was talking about in the beginning. We can go from QBO to making our tax adjusting entries to the tax return in ProConnect. And so that is a flow that we can do that if all of our clients were on QBO, then we would not need Tally4, right? We could cut out that. But if we have clients who are not in QBO, we would still have a need for Tally4. And so we would not be able to replace that program. We like e-signatures. That was easy to use. Delivery was very easy to do inside of ProConnect. The dislikes, though, would be limited calculation capabilities, so consolidated returns. I did find, and I can share this link. I'll share it out here after the webinar, maybe put it in where the resource is. But I did find a link that actually compared, and this was posted by Intuit, and it was updated within the week, but compared ProConnect, Pro Series Basic, Pro Series Professional, I think they called it, and then Lacert on all of the various different calculations. I thought it was interesting to look at. So if you're serious about looking at ProConnect, I would recommend just checking out that grid that they shared, because they went into different calculation options and what can ProConnect handle. And so if we said that UltraTax and Lacert are very similar, right? They're both server-based applications. They both have some level of complexity. They do things slightly different, but from a standpoint of like, let's compare functionality, Those two would be similar. So to see a chart that Intuit put out, which has ProConnect in it and Lacert, and you can see where those two line up, because that would give you a good indication. So I'll share that link. But then ProConnect 709 is paper file only, and then it requires other tools, which I've mentioned, right, to bring in non-QBOA data. So just some highlights on likes and dislikes. Ben,
Yeah,
you doing
Amy,
okay?
the we're doing good. We're about halfway through our time, everybody. Halfway through our time, Amy, doing great. Browser based on the ProConnect side with QBOA integration. Those are big likes. Having multiple clients open at once, those are big likes. Um, and then certainly on the UltraTax side, the ability to handle more complex returns, as you said, and definitely the firm's familiarity with the system. Certainly, those are biggies as well. So yeah, good job. Or I certainly can understand all your likes and dislikes.
Perfect. Okay. I just shared out that link that I just mentioned. So if anyone's curious, it's there for you now. Let me jump back
I'll put that
into.
into the resource library as well, Amy, so that we'll have that going forward if they update it. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. Look over in the
Perfect.
chat panel for that, everybody. Amy dropped in a accounts.intuit.com link that you can click on. All right, Amy.
Okay, so now let's just do a little bit of a walkthrough, right? So via screenshots, because keep it easier, make sure, like Ben said, we stay on point here and on track just to show you some highlights. I'm going to talk us through this. If we are inside of QBO, we're going to walk through ProConnect first. We're all pretty familiar with UltraTax, but I'll refresh your memory after we go through ProConnect with UltraTax view. But if we're inside of QBO, we have accountant tools up at the top, right? And once we go into accountant tools, there's two areas that we can go into there. There's the prep for taxes. You can do that even if you don't use ProConnect. And technically speaking, because we have QBOA, we can use ProConnect. You could go out there and you could test a return right now and not have to pay anything. You would only need to pay if you wanted to print a PDF of that return and look at the PDF of that return, but you can view that return on screen. You can integrate with QBOA right now and drop it in, like all of that you can do. So it's essentially a free trial. You just can't print it, create a PDF, you can't e-file it, but you could mess around with it. So if you're curious on what it really looks like, but that prep for taxes area is what is going to take us through the ability to tax code group and map our accounts, right? How do we want them to flow over to the tax return and where do we want them to go? And what adjusting entries do we need to make? So if we went right into prep for taxes, then it would take us into the screen where it'll list our year-end tasks. We can put documents in there. We could review and adjust from there. But really, we would want to be looking at groupings and statements. Okay, how are we pulling things through to the tax return? If we want to group accounts together, that is where we would make it happen. We also then would be able to do our tax mapping. So we would select which software we are mapping this for and what entity type it is. And once we select those two items, then it will allow us to select our account or our groups and assign what line number it needs to go to. And then once we set this information up, right, the next year, we would just need to do it for updated accounts if there are updated accounts up there, but it would hold that information for us. So once we have mapped this information, then we are ready to look at our tax options. So top left corner, I have a screenshot of the tools. Okay, just to show that you can download the work papers pack. So anything that you've added in to prep for taxes, you could download and save that. And then we can choose a carry forward from previous year. We can lock books, right? So nothing changes once we do this. Then we would go into the tax options. Are we wanting to update a return that already exists inside of ProConnect? Because we told it that we were sending this over to ProConnect when we were in our tax mapping. Do we want to create a new return in ProConnect, or do we want to export a CSV file? So we could do this for another solution that we're using, Tax Solution. Updating an existing return is ideal, right? So if we were going to be using ProConnect, we would do a conversion, which we'll talk about conversion in a moment, but any tax conversion is not pretty. It doesn't matter where you're going and what you're coming from. A tax conversion is a lot of work. It's a lot of upfront first tax season time that's going to happen. A lot of pain is going to happen there, with the hope that in future years it becomes much better because you've gone through that conversion. So, but we would do update an existing return because we would want the converted data to already exist in ProConnect, and we would want to be bringing in this information into the client's tax return so that we would have the historical information in there. So then when we choose update existing return and we pick the client, then it drops us into a book to tax adjustment screen. And that is where we can create our tax adjustments. So if I need to do an adjustment for meals, now we could throw that in there. If there are any other adjustments that need to get added, we would throw that in there. Then we aren't even importing it into ProConnect yet. We would then click that review form and import button. And that would bring us to a screen where it would show us, okay, this is how you have mapped things, giving us the list on that left-hand side there. Here's what it's going to look like in form view. And then if you're good with that, you could click next and it will drop it into ProConnect. If you need to go back and make additional adjustments or fix some of your tax code groupings or whatever it might be, right, you could go back and do that. So let's just
Amy, question. So the screens that we're looking at, are they in QBO? Are they like in an intermediary area? Are they in ProConnect? Where are these screens?
these screens are technically in QBO.
Okay.
So, and right now, so we've gone from QBO, that prep for taxes was inside of QBO. Then when we've clicked to create or update existing client, it's like in this interim screen. So we are between QBO and ProConnect right now in this book to tax adjustments.
Got it.
Once we move past this, then we are in ProConnect. So that would take us into ProConnect. What you're seeing on this left side, that's like your ProConnect navigation screen on the left-hand side, right? This is where we will see tax returns. We can do tax plans through ProConnect, where we could project out a year is really what we're doing there with different scenarios. It'll give you a list of scenarios. You can choose to add them to that client or not. You will see all of your clients listed, and that would really pull all of your clients that you have inside of QBOA would be listed there if you wanted to create a tax return for any of them. You have your e-file dashboard. You can view the client portal interaction, the reporting options that they do have available to you. Then you could jump back to QBOA, or you could see other solutions. So that's all, like, we're in ProConnect right now, and that's our navigation on the left-hand side. But we're specifically in a return here in the center. And so we have profile, we can jump into input, we could check the return, we can file the return. Those are all different screens. Profiles, like what states do we need to add to this client? That's where we would come in here and choose the states. Are we filing extensions? We would mark those options in this profile area. And then the input screens are on this next screenshot I have over on the far right-hand side. So, you can look at the ones that currently have data on them, that in use option, or you can just see all of them and jump through. You can also use a search bar. Like, I'm trying to find this screen, where the heck is it? That will be the hardest part. If you're very familiar with a current tax system that you're using and you go to a new one, again, it doesn't matter which one you go to, it's like, where the heck do I enter this? I know how to do it in the current or the previous solution that I was using. So we're in ProConnect now, a little bit of navigation. On this screen here, you have on the left-hand side would be like, okay, we're in input and we can navigate input. There's also a review form button you could click and it will open up a separate window. And this is where you could see all of the forms and the information on them based on what you've entered in the input. You could see them on two separate screens. You could be refreshing the forms view as you make changes in input. This does not give you direct linking though. Like if I had those two views displayed, I I couldn't click on the form and it would take me to where I needed to go in the input. If I were just navigating on this screen I have on the left, because I can check return right here, that would take me to form view inside the same window. Then I could click on a form field and it would take me back to input. But I wouldn't be able to have both screens open looking at that. I could technically be in the client twice, but whichever window I clicked in last and updated, that's the one that wins. So I say that to say, like, you could technically have two people inside of your firm in the same client. But if Ben's in the client and I'm in the client and I update information and Ben updates information, it's going to save whatever Ben updated last, not necessarily what I updated. So while it's possible that you can both be in the same client at the same time, yeah, it's maybe not ideal. Although what it will do for you is up here where it says you, another tab or window, it will tell you how many people are currently in that client. So you know, like, hey, Ben just jumped into this client. I better make sure he knows I'm in it and that I'm working on it and updating it. So, okay, so you can see both at the same time. And then you can, from a checking return standpoint, you've done most of your input into it. Now you just want to see, it'll give you tax summary. You could look at all of the forms in this forms area, but then you will have all of the diagnostics or overrides, and these diagnostics will display. It'll tell you exactly what it's talking about. It'll show you the screen that it's referencing. You can actually update it right from the diagnostic screen, or you could click a button to go right to that specific input in order to update it. So pretty similar. Like for those of you using UltraTax, you click the diagnostic, it takes you to where it's talking about. Similar idea here in ProConnect. And then the e-file screen is on the right-hand side. So file return, you have the ability to e-file. Those are all of the options that you can do there. And then your e-signature and printing and sending K1 packages. So you can do all of that directly through ProConnect. Last thing I'll show on ProConnect is just the client screen. You do have a lot of different options for how do we want to look at our client list. You know, you can look at it by return type, and so you can see all the different entities and the status within an entity. You can look at it by e-file progress. You could look at it by e-signature date, by return status, which you can customize your return status. What do you want them to be called? Do you want, you know, in prep, ready for review, with client, right? Whatever statuses you currently use inside of your current system, you could put in there. Do you want to see them by assignee? So just a different way to look at things that exists out there on how you want to view it. So just a quick walkthrough, right? You can go from very, very slick from a move from QBOA, take your client, map your accounts, make your tax adjustments, drop it right into ProConnect. From a conversion standpoint, check everything, because just like any conversion, it doesn't convert everything. State information doesn't convert. Depreciation, you always want to check. Carryover information, you're going to want to check, right? But slick on how we can get it in there from a team is really navigating from one program and being dropped right into the other program automatically.
Makes sense, Amy. Okay. All right. So we've talked through that. I think we'll do a poll here pretty soon. So we've just got about 15 minutes. Time obviously flies here. We'll talk a little UltraTax And then we want to make sure we have time for cost and decision point. So that's kind of where we are here. So poll number 3 is up, everybody. What accounting software are most or all of your clients on? You got to pick one. So obviously, maybe things may be in slightly different, and maybe in different spots, of course, but where are most, if not all, or all of your clients on in terms of accounting software? So, all right, I'll have this poll up for 10 more seconds. Poll number 3. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close poll number 3 right now. And here's the results on poll 3. So most are all QBO,
Yeah.
a few in accounting CS, and then one something else. So, all right, I will stop sharing. Amy, back to you. Talk a little UltraTax, then cost, then decision points.
Okay, perfect. So let's look at, move windows so I can navigate. Okay, we are going to look at an UltraTax workflow, but where I'm at right now is this screenshot is actually Tally4. So with UltraTax, in order to go from QBO into UltraTax, we are using Tally4. Sits in between those programs, right? So what I just showed you, I'm going to walk through like similar workflow. Like we get from QBO, we went all the way to ProConnect. I'm not in QBO, I'm just in Tally4, but Tally4 can import from QBO. So we have connected QBO to Tally4. And then what that does for us is that allows us to bring in information directly from QBO into Tally4, which is what we are looking at on the screen here. And then the blue box that I have highlighted is how we would map those accounts and or groups. So similar screen, we're in the trial balance screen. We can set our groupings in here. You can see that clinic income has all of those items grouped up into it. So each of those accounts are not flowing over separately to the tax return. It will come over as one line item for clinic income. And we've mapped it to gross receipts or sales, right? And so that is how we would map in here. That will hold for us. Next year, we'll roll the Tally4 binder forward. We'll import the updated QBO or information from the current year, and then be able to, if we need any new accounts that need to be mapped, we could do that. Then we will be able to download the tax file after we make journal entries. So first, journal entries on the right-hand side. So we could come in, we can make any tax journal entries that we need to make. Once we have done that, we've confirmed we're good. Tally4 allows us to download the tax file. And once that tax file is downloaded, then we are able to come into UltraTax. So now we're in the UltraTax screen. We've gone up to utilities and we've done a trial balance Excel import while we're inside of the UltraTax client that we want to bring this data into. Then we're inside of the client, right? Information has come forward. So just like I showed you with QBO and ProConnect, it dropped into the tax return. Same thing here. We've dropped into the tax return. This is what we would have to do with QuickBooks Desktop, though. If we had QuickBooks Desktop clients and we wanted to bring them in, we would need to be using something separate with ProConnect because it does not do a direct integration. So now what I'm displaying here is I'm displaying that we have the input screen on one side, the form on the other. If you're using UltraTax, you're very familiar with that. We have the diagnostics, right? They're just displayed different, but you have critical, you've got informational, you've got overrides that will appear there. And then you've got your printing, the ability to create electronic delivery and push it through a different solution, or, you know, an integrated one. Onvio or NetClient is integrated, just separate fee there. And then you have e-filing. Okay, this is where we're going to transmit returns, retrieve acknowledgements. If we are delivering things via portal, we could do so directly through here. If we're using SafeSend as a separate solution for delivery, this is where we're essentially pushing things out of the UltraTax area to wherever else they need to go, whether it's a taxing agency or a client portal or a separate solution. And then UltraTax has their client listing. So what I am displaying here, and I don't know if any of you looked at this year, but you might have noticed when you did your pro forma at the beginning of the season, many, many months ago here, it was asking if you wanted to push it to ultratax.com. So Thompson has created ultratax.com, which you would log in with your normal Thompson credentials, and then it would be your client list in a web browser. And so you can manipulate that list out here. What do you want to look at? How do you want to look at it? So you have the ability to change your columns, to filter your columns. It's essentially like your green E that you would look at your electronic filing information. It's just on ultratax.com. So it does have a browser option to look at your client list and the status, but not to access the program. So that was kind of a look there. A couple things though have come in. You know, so Marcus is sharing the mapping from that has happened inside of Tally4 has been a great task for our TOA team members to help map accounts for a client just based on how they were mapped before. Because this last tax season was our first season using Tally4. And so, or was it our second season? I think it was our second season. Marcus, was that our second season? They all run together. But that has been good, that mapping. So, and then question came in, if 1120 and 1065s are prepared in ProConnect, does the K1 flow over to the 1040? Yes, the K1 does flow inside of ProConnect. So great question. If you're doing the pass-through entity, you can bring it down into the individual. It's not automatic. You have to like tell it to do it. So like UltraTax would be automatic. You'd open it up. You just say, yes, accept it. ProConnect will do it, but it has to be prompted. Okay, let's jump into cost here. And so I wanted to lay this out, right? If you're using UltraTax, you're very familiar. I have screenshots of their pricing lists that you have access to when you log into your account, but you can basically purchase unlimited. So if you do X number of returns, you would purchase an unlimited license if it makes more sense for you to buy unlimited instead of paying per return. What is on the right-hand side is the per return fee. Okay, so left side is like some of their unlimited fees, not all of the states, but right side is their per return. ProConnect is per return, but it includes federal, whatever states you need to file for that client, whatever municipal returns you need to do. It includes e-filing. It does not include e-signature. Okay, that would be the only thing. Otherwise, it's included for the price that's listed there. And then ProConnect has advanced users, which not everyone needs to be an advanced user. So they give you a screenshot of like what's included in it, but there's also a help topic if you're really digging into it of what does an advanced user, what can they do? This would be like for somebody who's going to e-file all of your tax returns, right? And manage the entire client list. It would not be a tax preparer, does not need to be an advanced user. So you don't need to buy advanced users for everybody in the firm. I did, though, do a price comparison just to display here. So these are your per return. I was giving you just a screenshot of like, okay, what's the difference per return between these two, UltraTax and ProConnect. But I actually mapped this out for DBA. So on the left-hand side for DBA is what our renewal was for UltraTax. So we have 12 users. We've purchased unlimited Fed for individuals, partnerships, and corporations, and unlimited e-filing for businesses and individuals, right? And then some unlimited states that it made sense for. So we're at like what, 31,000, 32,000 if I round up. If ProConnect was priced out similar, same number of returns. So you'll see I dropped in We do about 267 individuals. We do about 279 business returns. We're currently getting a 35% off. But that was only good until July 30th. So, it's August now. But then I did 8 advanced users. I don't know that we really needed that many, but I was just being safe with my calculation. So we're at about 17,000, but since it's August now, we're really at about 25,000 if I take away that 35% discount, right? So we're about $6,000 different between the two programs. Now, what isn't factored in, 7,000, what isn't factored in over here in UltraTax is the server costs to have our Azure server and the fees that we're paying to maintain that server. Okay, so this is just straight software on each side.
It's a good comparison, Amy.
That was interesting to look at. It's not
Yeah,
as
very interesting.
drastic. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a price difference, but definitely 35% makes it a lot more drastic. And if you're Marcus, all fees are negotiable with vendors. So that was with no
All right, so
negotiation.
we've got about this is we're at near end of our time here, Amy. So
Okay.
I really like this slide. Some good decision points. So keep your momentum going. Let's
Okay.
talk through the decision points.
Okay, so just good food for thought, right? From a DBA standpoint, what is the server situation? I mentioned earlier we were considering ProConnect because of our server situation and wanting to get rid of a server. Since we've hired Angel and he is maintaining our Azure server now, we're good. We're good with our current setup. So if we're good with our current setup, okay, UltraTax is a good choice for us. If we need browser-based, ProConnect is a good consideration to dig into further. Do we have very many complex returns? If the answer is yes, then UltraTax would be a better solution. If the answer is no, they're not really that complex. We don't do a lot of consolidated. We looked at that grid that you shared with us of the comparisons of the Intuit products, then ProConnect may be a good solution. Are most of the clients on QBO? Ben, you already asked that as a poll. And so if the answer is yes, ProConnect is pretty slick on how it goes from QBOA right into ProConnect. If we have clients, not a lot of clients on QBO, then UltraTax may be a better option. Do we need a separate fixed asset program? I said, yes, UltraTax has the depreciation inside of it, but it also has fixed assets and direct link to fixed assets. Same data set, essentially, which is why if you really like your fixed assets program, you're not sure you could move away from that, and you're using fixed assets, you would be sticking with UltraTax or looking into solving for that. If you're not really tied to that, you're fine with the asset module that's built into the tax package, then ProConnect has the depreciation module built in. It'll calculate depreciation for you. Does your current workflow warrant a change? Does something need to change with your tax workflow? You're trying to reduce maybe apps that you're using. If yes, you're looking at something different, then evaluating ProConnect, good thing to dig into. I mentioned earlier, if you were on, you can use ProConnect right now. You just can't print a return or e-file a return. So you can drop a return over into it and mess around with it and see what you think. If you don't want to change your current workflow and you're on UltraTax, stay where you're at. Does changing tax software sound scary? If the answer is yes, I mean, you would be normal. That's a normal feeling. Is it scary enough or not as scary that the pain that you're experiencing right now, you want to change, you're willing to go through some pain, then ProConnect could be good. If changing tax software seems way too scary and you don't want to go through that, then you would stay where you are. So just some good things to be thinking about. Not really picking any winners here today, just kind of sharing with you what each does and then decision points for you to think through as you make the decision that's right for you.
All right, Amy. If Amy, I'll put poll number four up here as we come against up our time. Will you put your grid back up just so people can see, or your scale? Will you
Sure.
put that back up? Yeah. Okay. Let me go ahead and put poll number four up, everybody. So, um, ahead of this coming tax season, are you considering switching tax software? So I put considering it, no. Yes, we're switching, or we're going through the switch now. No, but we have switched tax software within the last two tax seasons. I don't know, or something else. So, are you considering switching tax software? So, folks are asking that, or answering that fourth and final polling question. So, Amy, if I just move that out of my way, server situation, return complexity, number of your clients that you have inside QBO. Do you need a separate fixed assets program? Is your current workflow good? Are you happy with it? Is it getting the job done? And then does changing tax software sound scary? It's a good way to think about that, good way to say that. I would say that those are obviously six really good decision points that you've put together here. And just probably in general, right? Between a server-based system that you're familiar with and a browser-based system that maybe you're not as familiar with. So great decision points. So we're at our time here. Let me end this last poll, everybody. The results, couple folks considering it, majority of folks saying no, not switching ahead of this tax season, then a couple other folks saying, I don't know right now. So thanks to everybody for answering all of our polls. We're at our time. We went all the way from the beginning to kind of introducing things. We talked about a comparison, and you have uh, inside of our resource library, we've already got a PDF in there. If you look for the Tech Talk on UltraTax versus ProConnect, we'll have a recording up relatively soon, but you can find that PDF in there with a comparison. Likes and dislikes for both programs, Amy. Look through the workflows, for each system, for ProConnect and for UltraTax, with Tally4 in there with UltraTax, and also some decision points and costs. So, Amy, can you think of anything else as we tie the loop?
I think I'll just say that we answered that poll question as DBA as no, we are not moving upcoming for this upcoming season, but we will continue to evaluate ProConnect for sure. So
All right. Well, Amy, thank you very much for sharing with us and talking us through that. For everybody that hopped on, thanks so much for being a part of the webinar. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day here, a great rest of your week, and we'll see everybody soon. So, bye, everybody. Bye, Amy.
bye, Ben. Thanks, everyone.